panel discussion on transition from child services to adult services with CP. So I'm going to hand over to Jenny to introduce her panel of experts. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to explain what's going to happen in this session, and then I'm going to go over to the panel because that's who we're here to hear from. So, as was just explained, transition, what we're actually talking about, I realise there are lots of different transitions that people have through their lives, but really when we're referring to transition of people with a disability, it's generally talked about from that transition from children's to adult services, leaving school, going on to further education, or from adult into adult services. I wish we could answer the questions and go through everything you need to know about transition, but we now have about 40 minutes to do that, and we don't have a magic wand. So we're going to focus very much on the things that our panel have experienced, all their thoughts and ideas about transition, and hope maybe just to trigger some ideas, give you some inspiration, make you think a little bit differently. The other thing that I wanted to say as well is that if anybody has either thought about transition as a young person, been involved with it, I probably don't need to tell you that most people's experiences aren't great. And we were really keen with this session that we don't focus on that too much. We don't want to ignore the fact that transition for most people isn't great, but we want to try and flip the conversation a little bit and start talking about what we can do as professionals and parents and young people to try and make that journey a little bit easier. So, just to help me moderate the panel, can I just have a show of hands first of all for people who are in the room who are here primarily as a professional, so I know who the audience is? Okay, quite a few. And who's here as in their primary role as a carer or a parent? Not so many. Okay, so interesting, we've got more professionals. So I will try and make sure that we steer the conversation so that you get something out of it as well. We'll have our panel discussion. I definitely want to leave 10 minutes at the end for questions. So if you think of anything that you want to ask the panel members, if you could use your post-its or something and jot it down if you think you're going to forget, and then I'll come around and try and answer as many questions as I can. Those questions will very much be questions. I'm going to be a bit strict about that because I know that there may be stories in the room, and although I'd love to hear them, I think we need to keep it to a question because otherwise we just won't get everything answered. So we'll do that at the 10 minutes at the end. So before we start, I'm going to introduce the panel. So on the far side there, we've got Gavin Drysdale, and Gavin is in his last year at secondary school, so he's going to have a really interesting perspective on this for us. And I also have to mention that on that table there, Gavin has got his gold medal because he is a European gold medalist in racing. Next on the table here we have Dr. Danielle Farrel. She's Managing Director of her own company called You, which is Your Options Understood. And Danielle's here to give her own experience of her transition. And then last but not least we have Claire O'Neill. Claire's actually a founder member of Breakout Scotland, so any of you who are involved with Breakout might already recognise her face. She is mum to Dominic and Michael, and by profession is a heart failure nurse. And she's been through transition, so she's got some good insights for us. So we'll crack on and get started. Just while we're doing that, just remind you, if you want to put feedback, there's post-it notes in your bag. Please give us your comments on what's useful, interesting, and stick them on the board at the back. Lots of pictures. Thanks. So I think, Claire, we're going to start with you, if that's okay. And I'm interested to know how early you started thinking about transition, because some of us leave it too late, some of us think too early. So I'm interested to know when you started thinking about it and what that period of time was like for you.
Okay, I would honestly say I started transition thinking about it probably when Dominic was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at 9 months old. You think, oh my God, what's going to happen in the future? But seriously, it was mentioned when Dominic was 14 and I just couldn't think about it. We didn't have a social worker, and then when Dominic was 14, sort of starting to think about leaving school, we were appointed a social worker, and I just couldn't think about it. I spent all the time crying. But eventually when he was 16, we got a new social worker, and she and I worked really well together. She worked at my pace, and my pace was very, very slow and very emotional. but she did work with me. But so Dominic's transition didn't really start till he was 16, and Dominic has got very complex physical needs. So I think probably 14 would have been better to start, but I think between 14 and 16 what we did was we built up relationships with the social worker, and I think that was a really, really important thing to do, was for her to get to know us and for us to get to know her. And the other thing was, like, you know, Dominic felt he was in a really secure environment at school, and it was like building his mind, you know, what's going to happen next. So I don't feel the 2 years were a waste of time, but it is maybe better starting at 14 as a relationship building thing, and then before they're 16, because you then need to think, well, at 16 they're adults, and you might need to think, well, you can't speak for them, and you might have to think, I need to get guardianship to be able to, you know, do what you feel that you and the disabled person needs.
Yeah, so that relationship building was with a young children's services social worker, but not the adult social worker. That comes later, doesn't it?
Well, the social worker we had a transition team in East Renfrewshire, but they don't have that anymore. So now I think it goes to adult services, and I didn't have a social worker for ages because everything was going really, really well. And that's the one thing I say, the dread that I had all of Dominic's life to transition, it's actually not as bad as you think it's going to be, and I think you actually fear that it's going to be really, really bad. But as long as you know what you want, and as long as you know what the disabled person wants, it isn't really too bad. Yeah, you're constantly got your finger on the pulse, watching what's happening, but so
yeah,
no,
okay. Gavin, you've got quite a different perspective as a young person, sort of in the middle of it really. Have you given much thought to transition?
I'm going to be completely honest and admit that I haven't really started the transition process into further education, which would be university. It is not a situation I had planned for. It is just the way things have panned out. Last year, I Saturday 5th hires and I got 150% extra time in my exams, so they ended up being all 6 or 7 hours. I didn't have much free time to plan for the future, and even still now, I am limited in how much I can do due to my current situation.
So, bearing that in mind, that you haven't had a chance to have much of a think about what you might want to do, maybe this is for the professionals in the room, what sort of support would you like to be getting from the people that are working with you to help you plan?
I think support through transition from professionals is vital, as they have the expertise and I have it very little so far from professionals. I have had a couple of people say to me, I'm happy to come with you if you decide to visit any university campuses, and have had a few discussions about it. Well, that is good and I appreciate their offers. I would have liked them to speak to me in more detail and come to me and say this is how university would work hypothetically regarding the logistics, what support I would get. If I chose to stay on campus, what accommodation would be available to me. I have always had great difficulty at picturing myself at university, especially after my experience of school over the last couple of years. So, what I think I need is someone to explore all the possible options I wanted to consider with me and build a picture of university life would potentially look like for me.
That's really interesting, because it's quite easy for some of us, I think, when we're working with young people to make assumptions, but clearly you need some advice and support about university, which is such a really important aspiration for you. Danielle, looking back at your transition, what would you like to have had from professionals in terms of advice, do you think?
Well, I suppose I've kind of gone through what Gavin spoke about. Sorry, I suppose I've kind of gone through what Gavin spoke about, gone through the university process, and quite recently I was involved with the Partners in Policy Making course through Cerebral Scotland, and as a result of that I had a person-centred plan done for me, and it's now graphic and on my bedroom wall. And for me, having had that done now at the age of 32, I can see how beneficial it would have been had it been done earlier, because I've achieved what I've achieved and what I continue to achieve without that. But had it been done earlier, I might not have faced the challenges that I faced to get to where I am now.
Can you explain what a person-centred plan is for anyone who doesn't know?
If I'm brutally honest, it's a very emotional journey. I said things I didn't think I would say. I said things I didn't know I was feeling. And the things I did say, I didn't even think were going on in my head. But when the facilitators took me through that journey and that process, it made me realise a lot of things. And I think that's why it's now on my bedroom wall, because I think I need to now process it and think, right, where am I? Where do I need to be? What do I need to get to that point? And I think, as Jenny pointed out earlier, we're obviously here to talk about young people in transition, but I think even having that done now shows me at the age of 32, I'm still in transition and I've still got such a long way to go.
Yeah. And I think it's really easy to understand that a young person of your age, Gavin, at 17, may not have an idea of what you want to do for the rest of your life. I mean, I've got the 19-year-old sitting here who was in exactly the same position a couple of years ago, and it's a big deal.
In my early years of secondary school, I considered sports science and business, and I began to look at university courses before, but I was unable to take it any further due to my situation. Although I have interests, I don't know what profession pathwise will be available to me. If you have a disability, I think you're always concerned about the future and you want to make the right decisions so you can maximise your life to the fullest. Something I have always been frightened of, that I decide I would like to do a certain university course. Then everything gets put in place for me and I change my mind, which would have probably happened if I started transition to university at 16. If I was able-bodied, that would be quite a straightforward process, but with a person with a severe disability who relies on other people, I imagine it would get complicated. That is why I have chosen to not become stressed by transition and wait until I'm ready to explore the options, because I don't particularly want to be rushed into a decision.
Yeah, very wise words. We're talking about professional input, Claire. How, in your experience, have you found it best to gain cooperation and work alongside professionals? I think it's quite a fine line to tread between sort of getting what you want and need, but not being a troublemaker, whatever I say. So how do you find that line?
I think I've learned through the years, and I've learned probably the hard way, and so did the professionals, not to be bolshy. And certainly when my son was at school, it was very difficult not to be bolshy, because it was awful. And I think if you're bolshy, you work against them, they work against you. So I think no in your own head what you want and what the young person wants. And I think the one thing is, don't assume that you think that you know what the young person wants, because I did that, and he went somewhere and he really didn't want to be there, and he pretended, now my son's severely disabled, can't speak or anything, but he pretended one day that he had a cold and he was supposed to go into the place that we had a placement, and he pretended the cold, and I had to phone my mum and say, can you come and get Dominic, because he won't go, and that was it. That was the last time we ever set foot back in the place, because I had felt that was the right place for him, and it wasn't. The professionals, the social worker, she didn't feel it was really the right place for him either. But I was like, no, I'd rather he was somewhere, settled in a sort of, no, it wasn't a centre, but in a placement, and it wasn't right. But I think I've lost my train.
That's all right.
So don't be bald straight, work with them. The other thing I think you have to be really realistic. There is no point in looking at something that's not going to work. Know what your choices are out there, and see if it's a realistic choice. I think the parents should take the lead, but you have to try and listen to what the professionals are saying to you and come to try and strike a balance. I think the most important thing is good communication. I think, if you don't have good communication, you don't really have anything.
And that's interesting, because you kind of mirrored something Gavin said there about changing minds, and Gavin being worried about wanting to change mind about university, and you've experienced the same with Dominic. And I know that I've had a conversation with a social work team where they suggested that there's no point in planning any earlier than 6 months for transition, because the young person's circumstances might change and their mind might change. But that's kind of normal, and I think that shouldn't be that if we don't start planning. It just means that you plan, but you plan with the acknowledgement that things might change. Danielle, anything you talked about person-centred planning had really helped you in the latter years.
Yeah.
How did you make decisions at that stage of leaving school? Did you know what you wanted to do then?
Looking back, I probably, if I'm honest, I don't know how I made those decisions, to be quite a bit fair. But I had various experiences in education where I was in mainstream primary, and then with the support of my parents, I decided not to continue in mainstream education. And although I hate this phrase, I moved into special education, to a school that doesn't exist anymore. But at the time, it was this only special school in Scotland that followed the mainstream curriculum, and it was definitely the right decision for me. I know other people would sit here and tell me differently, but I went there and I was able to, I suppose, start my journey in education, and I was able to obtain my highers and my standard grades as it was at the time, and then they supported me in 6 years to go back into mainstream education, and that helped me decide that that's what I wanted to do. So after 6 years, I went back to the local college in Ayrshire, and then spent a couple of years there until I got my HND, and then went back to uni, and then worked for a bit, and then went back to uni again and got my PhD. So but I didn't really have much support from social services or those decisions. It was just a case of, this is what I'm going to do. And obviously I've had input from social services since the age of 14 due to personal reasons, but that was more from a support at home perspective as opposed to education. It was just more of a case of, this is what I want to do, and somehow I went and did it.
You certainly did. Claire, you were talking earlier about finding out about things, where do you find out about stuff? I mean, is it literally just not Yorkhill anymore, but Yorkhill waiting room, or any tips and tricks on where you can find out about different services that are available, what happens, benefits, all this kind of thing? Where do you find it out?
Well, I'm being honest, no one, I basically found out myself, no one really advised us where to go, what to do, where to look. But just interesting, last night I was just looking at a couple of things and oh my god, Google is very good now. And there was like contact a family. I was just looking at the stuff last night on there and I thought, if I had been 15 years and computer illiterate then, I would have been looking there. I feel it was just sort of, prior to being a nurse, I had been involved with disability, so I had a wee bit of knowledge myself of what was out there, and a lot of it is word of mouth, a lot of it is going and looking to see what you think is suitable, going and looking at like the colleges, getting prospectuses. That's what I got prospectuses and Dominic went to college for 2 to 3 years, which wasn't very good. Just then eventually the social worker had mentioned some places as well, but really there isn't really an awful lot out there, and it takes a lot of looking to see what's going to happen. And my own son, he knows in his own mind exactly what he wants to do, and that's to be a king and live like a king, and not go to college, not go here, not go there, but he certainly knows his own mind and he lives his life to the full potential like a king. So he's totally having a totally fulfilled life, but just look out there and see, match up what you want, what they want, and what's out there.
So in your particular experience, starting to think about it earlier, that was a benefit, because if we do the whole kind of head in the sand, I don't want to think about transition because it's way too scary, doesn't give you that opportunity to do that looking.
And I think it's harder as well, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, I might be totally wrong, but I feel it's maybe harder the more severe the disability is as well. If you're totally dependent, you've got to look and see, is a college accessible? I mean, when Dominic went to, I think it was Coatbridge College, there was no changing facilities, no hoist, no nothing, and some of the people who needed to be changed had to go home. So, I mean, that's a few years ago now, but I think just look and see, what's out there.
Yeah. Gavin, we're talking about parents and young people taking a bit more of a lead in finding out about all this stuff. I'm interested to know if you think that if we're suggesting that, whether that takes the onus off the professionals and kind of letting them off the hook.
Based on my experiences, yes, I think we are. Hardly anyone knows that I'm planning to take some time off after school to explore my options going forward. Partly because very few have actually asked, and I don't feel confident bringing it up in a conversation with a professional or people at school for that matter. Most people assume I will be going to university after I leave school because I am capable and have the grades. Well, I would rather that was the case. That is not going to be practical or comfortable for me in 12 months' time. I think some people assume that when you're capable of making your own decisions and have a supportive family, you don't need help. In actual fact, my parents are very busy and do not know the ins and outs. I realise that I have shared my plans with you all after school. I feel comfortable doing this because I have this opportunity to explain, and hopefully you all understand the challenges that are involved. This is when I feel, I don't know if people will agree with me. You're mostly the one who has to ask for help from the professionals, and they don't come to you and ask how things are.
Well, thank you for sharing that story with us, because that's really helpful. Danielle, what's your view on that? So if we're as a group maybe suggesting that parents and young people need to get out there and do a bit more work on this themselves and not stick their head in the sand, is that letting professionals off the hook?
It is and it isn't. I totally agree with Gavin in that when I went through the person-centred plan process, I actually sat there and I realised that yes, I've had input from social work since the age of 14, and I'm through my own decision, I'm now having input again. But I realised through that process that nobody of the in terms of professionals from social work has actually sat and said, Danielle, what do you want to do in life? How do we help you do that? Nobody has ever actually asked me that, and now that I've chosen to have input again, which is having its own challenges at the minute, I actually said to the social worker, if you want to know about me, ask me, obviously, and I'll tell you, but go to my bedroom wall and have a look at that plan, and that will tell you exactly how I'm feeling and where I want to go and how I need your support to get there. And she went through and she said, oh my God. And she said, can I take a photo of that so I can go back to the office and actually digest it? And I said, oh yeah. And but see, when you look at a plan like that, because after having it done, I'm now trained to facilitate it for people and support them through that process, which I hope to do at some point. I now see that a lot of the things in this support plan, and I guess a lot of the things that concern parents and young people, when you actually sit down and pull it back, a lot of it is not to do with providing services. A lot of it is just general things that most people in this room take for granted, and it's just about actually sitting down and not having the sort of mindset of how much money is this going to cost, and just looking at the person and actually saying, well, that isn't going to cost anything, that's about helping them look at universities, or that's helping them look at building their social circle and things like that. It doesn't need to be service-led.
No, that's very, very true. And I think we do get a bit bogged down with the finance and the budgets and the self-directed support without thinking a little bit more out of the box about all those normal things, exactly as you say, that the rest of us take for granted. Claire, what's your advice if things don't go to plan? So, we come up with these ideas, we think outside the box, with the person-centred plan done, we have an idea of what the young person wants to do, they do themselves. What happens if you hit a stumbling block?
Again, try not to be bullshit. I think know what the current legislations are as well, know that it's the young person's fundamental right for things to be right, try and work with the people, you put your point of view over, let them put their point of view and try and win it, which I normally do. So I've been quite lucky because I'm quite persistent, and I feel, as parents, you're the experts, professionals are the experts, but you're the one who really knows your young person the best, and hopefully most professionals, will accept that, more or less, but and I think it's well known as well that a good transition for parents and for a young person is going to eliminate less health and social care input and stuff if it's working well. So I just think you just need to try and work with the people, put your ideas across, and just see how it goes.
With your professional head on, Danielle, what's your view on that?
About what we
about what happens when things don't quite go the way you want them to go.
I think well, since completing my PhD at university, part of the reason I'm here today is because I now run my own business using my experiences of living with a disability to help and support parents and young people. So yeah, my advice would be to access services, and so what I've been told today is that it helps when somebody has lived experience, because like the process Gavin's just starting, I've been through that process, for example, so I would hope to be able to offer advice and guidance to young people and also to parents, because my dad has probably been exactly where you're sitting as a parent. So I tend to think, well, I can use those experiences and what I know from that side of things to help parents as well.
Yeah. So finding an advocate is a good start, and that would be
I think the other thing is it's quite a lonely journey as well. I think you feel, oh my God, you're the only person out there. So sometimes it's good to share with other people who are going through the same experience as you, and say, hey, what do you think? You know, when you think of, you know, I've got another son, and you think of the support network that you have, you know, for like my 18-year-old son compared to what we did have for Dominic, you know, there's hardly anyone out there. But I think, you know, share with other parents, you know, what do you think, as well, you know, because it is quite lonely.
We've actually only got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to open it out to the floor for questions. So hopefully some of you have got some questions. If you've got one, put your hand up. Anyone got any questions for the panel about what you've heard today? Anything about their experiences?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Danielle, you talked about person-centred plan, which sounds like it was a great experience for you. How would people go around accessing one of those?
Well, I know that in Control Scotland they have through the course of partners in policy making, which both myself and Jenny have completed. They are hoping to get a lot of us together at some point and look at what is actually available in local authorities, and actually pinpoint people to the local authority and let local authorities know that this is available, because realistically what you find is social workers don't have the time to sit with somebody and go through that process, and having been through that process, I would say it's not ideal for social work to lead that discussion, although it's good for them to be there perhaps and be party to the discussion, but they shouldn't lead it. I think it's very, very beneficial for it to be independent people, and the process usually involves two people. So while somebody leads the discussion, or it's more like a conversation, they don't fire questions at you or anything, but they maybe ask a question to evoke thought and see where the discussion goes, but they do that while the other person graphics it. So what you actually end up with is a really clear visual of where a person is and where they want to go and what they need to actually get there.
Yeah, so I think In Control would probably be a good place to start. And
I'm just wondering, does everybody actually know what a person-centred plan is?
Shall I? I think you've kind of given a really good overview, Danielle. A person-centred plan is a way of bringing out thoughts and ideas and plans that somebody might have for their short or long-term future. And so sometimes if you sit down with somebody of the age of sort of 16, 17, 18 and say, what do you want to do with your life? I mean, anybody is going to find that question hard to answer. So the person who's facilitating the person-centred plan is quite skilled at drawing out information and helping you come up with a vision for what you want to do. And it doesn't have to be a vision for what you want to do for the next 30, 40 years. It can be for the next year, it can be for the coming 2 years. And then you work backwards, so you know what the dream is, and you work backwards and find out how you're going to get there, baby steps, what can you do in the next month to get there, what can you do in the next 6 months.
The other thing is the support companies can do that as well, you know, if like through self-direct support we employ a company 43 hours a week for Dominic, and you know they have said about doing that, but I'm not ready for that either.
No.
So I haven't.
I think the only thing I would suggest is if you are going to find somebody out with in control to do it, just make sure they've had all the right training and they're doing it in the right way.
But I think you have to be very ready to do it as well.
Yeah.
You do.
Pauline.
Jenny, I was just going to add that around person-centred planning, I got one done as Caitlin's carer, and that had a huge impact, and it's great, I still pull my plan out and have a look and manage to fulfil quite a lot, but it also put me in a better position to be there for my daughter. So it's not just a person living with cerebral palsy or any disability. As a carer, I got one as well, and it was life changing for me. I ended up with a new job, and through it was amazing. But In Control, Scotland was the best. We got the training through them.
Anyone got any questions? Yes.
Yeah, just Gavin and Claire actually, both saying, well, initially Gavin was some advice, some help to step forward to see what opportunities there is for university. I have a son probably in that situation, but I also have a daughter who is going to be looking at probably more services in the community.
Yeah.
And it's great saying what your choices are, but each local authority is different. She's schooled in a different local authority to where we live.
Yeah.
How do you do it? How do you find the hours in the day to chase these services?
Claire, do you want to answer that one?
Well, at school my son had a coordinated support plan, and the schools and the agencies are supposed to work for 12 months to try and link.
All of the agencies are within her school, so physio, OT, etc.
Well, I'm not even going to go down the route of physio because that is a joke. Adult physio is a joke. Sorry.
Let's not go down that road.
I'll not even go down the route of healthcare in transition. Sorry.
Where would you?
We do have a CSP, however it doesn't link us back to our own local authority.
So are you thinking about community services,
Yes.
support and things like that, and where you would even start to look? Any thoughts, Claire?
Well, really, community services like day centres and stuff was something I didn't want.
They actually don't even have.
No, they don't
any
have
more
them now.
than
They
No.
have in East
No.
Renfrewshire, but I didn't want like a day centre or anything. And my son initially went to Touch Base, and that was where he didn't like. And that was through me going to look there. So I think you basically it's finding out yourself. Knowing, I just find
that
that.
was what you were going to tell.
So, yeah, and I'm being truthful, it was us going and looking, we went ourselves. The educational psychologist was good, he came with us to look at colleges, but college for Dominic was a bum in a seat, it wasn't good either.
As will it be for Sarah.
Yeah, it wasn't good. Dominic doesn't have a learning disability, and a lot of the people in the college had quite severe learning disabilities, and he couldn't settle, he didn't like it. So Dominic now is living a life that he wants to live, and it's probably to a lot of people he's not really doing a lot, but he is doing a lot and having a really, really good quality of life. And I think that's what we focused on, is quality of life. But colleges we looked at ourselves. I went to look at Touch Base. So sorry,
I think
but
my biggest fear is the thought of Zara getting pushed around Tesco with two
absolutely,
players,
absolutely, and that.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's keeping your finger on the pulse, like every day. And the other thing I think is get self-directed support and employ a good, like Dominic. I couldn't manage. I work 4 days a week, and my husband works. I couldn't manage if we didn't have support. So we get 43 hours a week, and I manage those hours so well during the week, and then on a Saturday night Dominic goes to the pub, and that's all his choice, goes to concerts, whatever. But no, I wouldn't want Dominic being pushed around Silverburn or whatever either.
If I can just input a bit there, something I've discovered over the last 6 or 7 months is the internet is a great source of information. I know that sounds really obvious and a bit banal to say, but getting on Facebook, getting on Twitter, following people who know people, going to things like this, Paragon Music, with one example, just going around and finding services which maybe are not go there for the day and stay there all day, but drop in and out, have come here for this group for an hour or two, and it's amazing how quickly you can fill a day up. And I know it's filling a day, we don't want to fill a day, but constructive things that they might enjoy. But I'm sorry, there's no magic wand.
No, there's look yourself.
Hiya, you've got a question?
Yes, it's great that young people, young generation nowadays are getting the opportunity. In my day, and I have cerebral palsy, in my day it just didn't exist. You say my day, it wasn't yesterday. But these opportunities for my generation didn't exist. To be honest, it was as if they just went round and stamped you in the head, failure.
Yeah,
That was the reality then.
I'm sure, yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah, Jackie was here. I'm the same age as Pat. We went through the same education system. But I find that, and to be honest with you, I know nowadays they get pathways and all that. We didn't have any pathways, we didn't even know what pathway were going on. We made our own path. And I actually think at 16 we were in a better place than you were, if you know what I mean. Because we just went into jobs. You know, I mean, it was easier for us to get work back then than it is now. Even a lot far easier. The pathway that I took was, I just went and found myself a job and decided, went to college, and for 2 years I decided what do I want to do. Well, I was great with figures, numbers, all that. So I decided that I was going to go into work, an office. So I became a cost clerk with a huge steel stock firm, and then I got made redundant on the Friday, and by the following Friday I walked into an accountant's office.
Yeah, I think like you say, a different time,
So
a different time.
scale.
Yeah.
I then did all my time and I became a qualified accountant, and I went to university, and yeah, it was different for certain reasons, because accessibility was zilch.
Yeah, there was nothing there.
Right? I mean, our idea, and a lot of the times where we were always on the ground level, they couldn't put us up in different classes and different. So we were, you know, it was. But we worked it.
Yeah.
We worked around it.
Did you have a question for anybody?
Yes, it's just a case of the transition side. I didn't really transition until actually I retired and discovered that my mobility was getting worse, right? And it's like the lady said there, it was physio that I really needed. And I never got that through my whole lifetime until, you know, somebody introduced me to bone bath. And I got that for the first time in 15 years. Now, you look at that and you think, how did that happen? But we weren't in the system, because the system, when we were young, wanted to put you into institutions.
Yeah.
You know?
And I suppose that's what we're fighting hard here to kind of try and avoid is how we avoid that.
It's sad that, you know, you're turning the wheel 50 years on and they're still trying to stop an into institutions.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Another part of that is
Sorry, can I just check there's nobody got any questions before? Yeah, sorry, we'll come back to you if we've got time.
I've got a question for Danielle. If you could take your 32-year-old self, sorry for mentioning a lady's age, and go back and give your 14-year-old self a piece of advice or a piece of information, what would that piece of advice or information be?
Lovely question.
Can I put me on the spot? But
No pressure.
and at all, it's fine. I think it would probably be to ask. I didn't know person-centred plans existed when I was 14, and yes, I had the support of my parents, and I still do support my dad. But my dad kind of leaves me to it because he knows I have the voice to speak up. And sometimes, to be honest, and he probably cringes at me sometimes. But he knows deep down I'm doing what I'm doing for the right reasons. I think if I was to tell my 14-year-old self what I know now, would be keep going, you will get there. Because I think right now I need to tell myself that at 32 in the position that I'm right now with transition. But yeah, that would be my advice. Sometimes you feel like you're not getting anywhere, but somewhere, somehow, you do find the strength to keep going and keep fighting, because in your heart, as was said earlier, for your young person, but it's the same if you are the disabled person, you know yourself better than anybody, and whether you're able to voice that yourself or have somebody voice it for you, never doubt that you don't know where you need to be.
Brilliant. I think we have to stop there. That was amazing. Thank you.